You know, if there's one slogan I think that sums up this amazing movement that we're seeing growing up around us, it is the slogan, "We are hundreds, we are millions, we are all Palestinians." Because I think this describes a movement going around the world. It doesn't matter which city you're in. I went from London, where there was the siege on the Israeli embassy, got on a plane, got off the plane at Beirut to find a siege at the US embassy and a siege at the Egyptian embassy. And there are big demonstrations, there are small demonstrations, but everywhere you look, even coming to this meeting today, there is a demonstration. I think it's a tremendous movement. And I really feel that something in the world has changed. Something has turned. And I tell you what, the Israelis are now beginning to realize this. I was reading the Israeli newspapers, I usually track the Israeli newspapers during this time, during these periods, and in the middle of the war, the majority of the reports they had were laughing at the Palestinians. They were saying, Yasser Arafat said to the Israeli army, "Go drink the water in Gaza if you dare." Well, now we're drinking the water in Gaza, and so on. And they said, "We've learned the lessons of the Lebanon war. We have our own YouTube station. We even have the BBC." And what's really interesting is the way in which people have seen through the lies. The way in which actually the Israelis have realized that there is something quite amazing happening, that they are beginning to feel very, very isolated. And I saw the change in tone inside of Haaretz when the Israeli military announced that all officers over the rank of colonel can no longer travel out of the country. Why? Because they fear being dragged up in front of war crimes tribunals. That is our movement, and I think that is really tremendous. And it's also something else, I think, that is taking place inside the Middle East that I think we here in Europe have a large part in playing. I've been on many demonstrations inside of Lebanon. I've been on demonstrations inside of Egypt as well. And what's really interesting about them is that usually when it's over the question of Palestine, it's usually attacking the Israelis, attacking the US, attacking the European Union or the United Nations and so on. Now the slogans are against the Arab regimes. And you really feel, and you can see the fear of the Arab regimes when you walk through the streets of Beirut. In November I was in the city and I joined a small picket outside the Egyptian embassy. There were a few internal security forces, a couple of cars and so on. This time when I went back, you couldn't get to the neighborhood. Surrounding the whole neighborhood in which the Egyptian embassy was, were 3 rolls of razor wire, and as we marched up, a tank drew up, the soldier got out of the turret, pulled the cover off his machine gun, loaded it with ammunition, and pointed at us. Just in case we got through the barbed wire, got past the tank, the riot police were behind them, in case we survived getting through. And you can measure this fear. You can measure the fear of the UN building, this shiny, beautiful building in the center of Beirut, which now lies empty and abandoned. Why? Because there's always protests outside it, and there's always people wanting to attempt to ransack it or set fire to it. Actually, the UN mission inside of Lebanon now has a secret headquarters that shows you the strength of their movement. There is, I think, a change that is taking place that is beginning to inspire movement inside of the Middle East, the likes of which we haven't seen for a very long time. And I'll give you an example of this. Just as I was coming to this meeting, I got a text message from a friend in Cairo, and I'll just read it out to you. I get these all the time. Train drivers reportedly on strike again, large numbers gathered at Ramesses station. Actually, another strike inside of Egypt. There are waves of strikes that are taking place that are amazing. But what is beginning to happen is the realization that the struggle for Palestine, the struggle for justice for Palestine is beginning to translate to the struggle that justice people have for themselves. And there's one example of this, I think, that illustrates it. On Monday of last week, the dear Saudi leader announced that he will give $1 billion to help the Palestinians. Bless him. He has a personal fortune of 18 billion, by the way. And unfortunately for him, this great announcement of generosity, on the same day, the Kuwaiti Investment Authority admitted that the Arab governments had lost $2.6 trillion in the credit crunch. And people were saying, we didn't know we had 2.6 trillion. We had 2.6 trillion. Why the hell are the sewers running through our streets? Why the hell are our schools crumbling? Where are the hospitals? And actually you feel this change and this anger beginning to meld into something really tremendous. There is, if you like, this jumping of demonstration, this jumping of mood across borders, across cultures, and across languages. Every time we march here in the streets of London, you know 200 million Arabs are watching you on TV. You don't understand how inspiring this is when you live in a regime where if you go out to the streets, chances are you'll be shot or you'll be tortured. There is, if you like, even the smallest thing, the smallest occupation, if you like, in terms of the size of the world, the one at King's, when Al Jazeera, the Arab news station, went to their press conference, I was getting messages from Lebanon going, who are these kings? We're seeing them on the... There's just one thing I want to say, one thing I want to finish off with, which is this. Keep it going. Absolutely. This momentum we have is fantastic. And I'll tell you what, that the Israelis think that they can simply walk into London and do a meeting. Well, you can't. You can no longer run, you can no longer hide. The world movement is now wrapping itself like a big arm around the Palestinians. As my daughter said, a big arm coming around and giving a slap to the Israelis. And that's exactly what we want. And I say, fantastic, the students, fantastic, the movement. You're inspiring people here, you're inspiring people in the Middle East. And together, I think, we will put an end to this grave injustice. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to start with an apology. I'm afraid I didn't go to King's. I was never in King's. But I just want to say this, that the question of humanitarian aid is going to become such a crucial political issue, especially for Hosni Mubarak's regime. You see, every school kid who gives 50p, or a trade unionist who gives £100, or the tenner you collect on the street, is going to translate into concrete, into food, into computer equipment, into books. The problem is, Gaza's under siege. The Israelis won't let the stuff in, and neither will the Egyptian authorities either. So that means that what we are doing when we're doing these collections is we're putting massive pressure on the regime, both on Israel and on Egypt, to actually open the border. This is why I think it's so crucial, such a crucial political question. Every 50p, I believe, is an investment people, especially the young people, are making in rebuilding Palestine. And this puts the regime absolutely on the spot. And I want, hopefully the teachers and so on, the trade unionists, to ask every week, has the money reached Palestine? Has it reached Palestine? If it hasn't, then we have to raise bloody hell. In this way, we can actually begin to turn into the solidarity into something real, which is both political, which challenges the regime, and also is in effect a breaking of the siege of Gaza. And that's why I think and that's why I encourage it. Thanks very much.